That show was amazing. Andor is seriously the best thing Disney has done with Star Wars since Rebels. And now I'm hooked all over again. I'm hooked. I was gone for a little while. I was done with Star Wars, especially after the travesty that was Obi-Wan Kenobi. And god damn it, they've hooked me with Andor. Why is that? Well, there's multiple reasons why, but I want to quote one of the writers here.
I can't imagine writing black and white. I believed in every villain I've ever written. You really got to believe in them. You got to love them. And you got to know why they're doing it. You got to feel for it. And there has to be a reason for it. You got to get behind everybody.
This quote vastly summarizes why Andor has restored my faith in the Empire after it's been turned into such a caricature by Disney, who wishes more to push a political agenda than actually tell a good story. But Andor is the first Star Wars show ever to showcase the Empire in not just a realistic light, but also a competent one. Which brings up my biggest issue with Star Wars and why, as into the lore as I get, it really isn't up there with my favorite science fiction universes at all. It's pretty low on the totem pole, actually, especially when compared to stuff like Mass Effect and Star Trek. The Empire has repeatedly been shown as being so corrupt, so idiotic, and so militarily inept that it destroyed my suspension of disbelief. I was much more attracted to the ideas of the Empire more than what Star Wars was actually doing with it. Even the characters within the Empire were cartoon cutouts at best, consumed with their own ambitions and greed, and thus allowing the rebellion to easily overcome them and eventually bring in the New Republic. And hear me out, that includes such loved characters as Tarkin and, yes, Darth Vader. Tarkin is an idiot. There, now that you've clicked off this video, congratulations, please hit the subscribe button. No, I'm just kidding. But I really do. I think Tarkin is an idiot because he can only think and see in black and white. As Spock would say in Star Trek,
this pattern indicates two-dimensional thinking.
To him, fear and the utter annihilation of the enemy are the only two proper responses to any uprising. And I get the fact that a lot of this, you know, if you go by the Tarkin novel, which explains his backstory and everything like that, that such a notion, such ideas were basically bashed into his skull since he was a little child. Nevertheless, you'd think a competent leader would adjust his plans in the hopes of seeing the bigger picture. Now, the Tarkin Doctrine, which was heavily embraced by the Emperor and the Imperial Navy, it's so dumb. It's a terrible and idiotic ideology at handling a rebellion. Establishing fear and violently putting down any uprising within your empire and stuff like that, it can, and in some cases it did, work in the short term, but in the long term, it will only ever succeed in driving moderates who are neither pro nor anti-empire into the arms of the rebellion. And nowhere is this more prevalent than the Death Star, which is single-handedly the most idiotic piece of technology the Empire could have possibly invested in. It drained countless amounts of manpower and resources which could have and should have been used elsewhere, as Grand Admiral Thrawn would have it. Instead, not only did the Empire invest in 2 Death Stars, which were both destroyed, but it also caused the rebellion to unite and become a truly formidable force militarily. Vader is no better, as he is an all-or-nothing character. I know, he's a Sith Lord, he is evil, but you can have a compelling villain who is not a total imbecile when it comes to military realities. Instead of having officers learn from their mistakes, he just kills them willy-nilly. He never takes into consideration the chaotic nature to the military hierarchy this creates, the slipping morale of the troops, and the largest cardinal sin any empire can possibly commit. It creates a pool of yes-men who do not question doctrine, tactical decisions, or operations. They simply do what they are told to disastrous results. Captain Nita is the definition of a competent leader. He makes a mistake, owns up to it, and fully accepts responsibility for losing the Millennium Falcon. He puts his men above himself, and he thinks about it with cold calculus, putting aside his own fears. But Vader is incapable of seeing this and simply kills him, robbing the Empire of what could have been an outstanding officer. Now, I wish to state this. Both of these men are totally outshined by the military genius that is Grand Admiral Thrawn. In fact, I've been reading Thrawn Alliances by Timothy Zahn, and it greatly showcases why Thrawn's style of leadership is just flat out superior. When Vader's crew loses a target, they all fear being killed. Not just being punished, but killed. When Thrawn's crew fails, they ask him for advice, and Thrawn gives them what he thinks they should have done, and he provides them the opportunity to learn and grow. You know, like a leader should. Now that diatribe is over, how does Andor restore faith in the Empire? Well, it's because they show how competent the Empire, in all actuality, should be. Now, what do I mean by restoring faith in the Empire? Let me clear some of that up. Well, basically, a lot of video essays on YouTube talking about Andor have definitely a certain political leaning, to put it politely. But all of them, I think, miss the underlying currents, which is what and why the Empire can work, and what makes it so appealing to many of those within the Star Wars universe itself. And also why fascism as a concept can, and often is, seen as appealing to specific people. This means we're talking about fascism. Now, I know that word gets thrown around so much that it basically loses all of its meaning, but in the case of Star Wars, it's apt, because fascism was always the visual and aesthetic intent with the Empire itself, both in front of the screen and behind it. Fascism is not a philosophical ideal or moral. It has no set agenda, and can only exist where a liberal or progressive element greatly challenges the more conservative wings. That is because politically it works like basic physics. For every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. There is a progressive, liberal, chaotic nature, and that is the action, and then fascism is the natural reaction to it. Thus, it's not like communism or socialism, which preaches a very specific way a government should run and how it should deal with its people. Fascism takes many different forms depending on the nation it sprouted in. Look at the big kahuna itself, Nazi Germany. Their ideology completely revolved around the idea that the Aryan race is superior, and this ideology drove their economic and military policy right up to their end in 1945. For Japan, that wasn't the case. In Japan, it was about the emperor and establishing a strict hierarchy in reaction to European and American imperialism post-World War I. Now, here's one that a lot of people don't really know about. Let's talk about Spain for a second. The Spanish fascists were not really economically driven at all. Their ideology greatly revolved around Catholicism and religion as a rallying point for the nationalists to converge. That was only possible when the Republican government downright outlawed Catholicism in Spain. So again, there was the action, and it has an equal and opposite reaction. So what binds the loose ideas of fascism? But the binding element of fascism that binds it together is the reactionary elements of it. That it is often considered order against chaos. Fascism is not a set ideology, as explained earlier, or an ideology of change even, but instead is a radical defense of a system that is already in place. This is why the middle and upper classes clamored to fascism, especially after the Great Depression began. It was basically choosing between the side that gives you a chance to succeed or the side that would blatantly say they will destroy you in every way, shape, and form because you're a simple business owner. Now, as mentioned earlier, fascism is the order amidst chaos. For Germany, it rose from the aftermath of the turbulence of World War I and then the unstabilized Weimar Republic. For Star Wars, that chaos was the Clone Wars, which brought the Republic to its knees. And we know people yearned for a strong leader, which is natural during times of great difficulty. This is why Palpatine was able to become the Supreme Chancellor in the first place, which is why the Empire was embraced so quickly and so thoroughly. It offered stability, unity, and order, all in which are fascist mottos. The individual takes a backseat in the name of the greater good, and usually mass murder and genocide is the result. Which is why I actually believe in the argument that fascism and communism are just different sides of the same coin, except fascism has much better fashion design. That goes down to the aesthetics of the Empire, which, in my opinion, are the sexiest fictitious uniforms ever designed. They are intimidating, they are unifying, they are clean, they are sleek, they are pure. They represent not the reality of the Empire, but an idea, which greatly attracts people like Karn and Meero. They've embraced the Empire for its ideas, and they believe in what they are doing. Especially with Meero. She takes harsh stances because she knows, in her mind, that the ends will justify the means. The individual is secondary to the collective order, in the hopes of restoring said order, the peace, and the tranquility of the Empire. She and Karns are just normal people placed under extraordinary circumstances. They are not maniacally laughing villains like we've seen all throughout Star Wars' history. These are people you might want to be friends with, you might even love, you might respect them, or even see as your coworker or your manager. And that's the beauty of this show. It does everything Rogue One tried to do, but was shackled by the need for endless nostalgia. Andor is full of everyday people. We understand their motives, why they are doing what they are doing. We want to root for the rebellion, but I'd argue that Luthen is arguably the most villainous individual in the show. Everything that I've just talked about, what does that really have to do with my idea that faith has been restored in the Empire? Well, let's look at Karn for a bit. He's socially awkward, he seems to be a bit of a loner, and he has a hard time connecting with other people. So what makes him such an interesting character is how relatable he is in this manner. He compensates for his awkwardness by embracing an ideology which offers the stability he yearns for. Being a part of the Empire means being a part of something larger than yourself. He is, in many ways, the epitome of what the Empire should be, but just isn't. He wants justice for those two men Cassian killed. And the fact that this is to be swept under the rug throws Karn into a moral and philosophical crisis that he's combating throughout the entire season. Now, on the other hand, we have those in ISB who are all, for the most part, seen as competent people who do their jobs pretty damn efficiently. This brings me all the way back to the beginning of this video. Other than Thrawn, Meero and Major Partagaz are the two most competent Imperial officers Star Wars has to offer. Any other competent person with any sense of moral compass usually abandons the Empire to join the rebellion. Look at Agent Kallus. Agent Kallus is a great example of this. Instead, Andor showcases both Meero and Partagaz as the epitome of good officers, dedicated to the work and who believe full-heartedly that what they are doing is right for the galaxy. Meero is fantastic at thinking outside the box, which causes friction with some of her fellow officers, but Partagaz, instead of embracing dogma like so many other Imperial officers do, he embraces her. Meero, once she is granted the power necessary, is also not what we've come to expect from an Imperial officer in Star Wars. She does not embody fear, killing anyone who disappoints her or somebody who just happens to get in her way. Instead, she embodies what a good leader is supposed to be. In one scene, it's actually one of my favorite scenes that she's in, her subordinate is looking through files late into the evening. Meero is suddenly shocked at how late it is and tells her subordinate to leave. It's late, after all. He should be with his family, and, he should get some rest because they're going to have to do a lot of work the next morning. Instead, her subordinate decides to stay because he knows she will. She's going to stay there and keep reading and looking through these reports. He stays not out of fear for his life, but because Meero has created an environment where he wants to stay. He believes in what she is doing. And the fact Meero was able to do this, I think, is the definition of good leadership. And when she doubts herself, her teammates are right there to pick her up. Not because they fear her or her lashing out at them, but because they want to. They want to help. They are 100% convinced that what they are doing is right. Hell, even Commandant Behaz, I think that's how you fucking pronounce his name, I can't remember. He's not a caricature. He could have easily have been a caricature, but he is portrayed in the show as a genuine human being. When Cassian takes him and his family hostage, Behaz is not a coward or acts in pure self-preservation like we would have seen if anyone else had written the show. Instead, he looks at his family, especially his son, and knows that if he does anything wrong, they will be killed. These rebels are not messing around. So he reluctantly goes along with Cassian and the other rebels. He looks full of concern, not fear, for the safety of his family. And I applaud the show for giving him that extra push without outright stating it. It humanizes him into being someone other than a stereotypical Imperial officer whose only contribution is to say, "You rebel scum." Nah, he's a totally fleshed out character. You believe him. You believe that this is a man who is actually placed here because he's good at his job. He's a human being, and the show is so good. I kind of like the show, ladies and gentlemen. And that is how Andor restored my faith in the Empire. No, not actual faith in the Empire, but as a series that has grown so stale and such a caricature of itself that any semblance of believability had vanished. Instead, this show treats the fascistic empire as evil, but in the best possible way. It's nuanced and full of average people who are not extraordinary in their own right, but are thrust into extraordinary situations. And it reaffirms my belief that the most interesting sides of Star Wars have nothing to do with the Sith or Jedi. Andor is proof that your characters are what will make a good series and tell a good story. These are men and women who you can relate to. Even the battles are not gigantic CGI messes, but instead they are small and close up and visceral and personal. And by doing this, it showcased a side to the Empire as an idea that I honestly thought impossible for Star Wars at this point. In case you couldn't tell, I love the show. I was very happy that I sat down and watched this show. I even got rid of Disney Plus for a while because I was so disappointed and done with Star Wars because of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then I got it back, and boy howdy was I glad to, because this show is so good, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, it's so good, I want to do more videos about Andor, so you can expect to see more videos about Andor. This is videos not even scratching the surface. I haven't even talked about Mon Mothma and the Imperial Senate and her whole thing, and how they explore the essence of Coruscant and everything like that. I haven't even touched that, and I'm going to. This video would be too long as it is, and I'm rambling now. Please forgive me, but Jesus Christ, I loved the show. Watch it. It is by far the best thing Disney has done with Star Wars since Rebels, and that is saying a lot. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. All my social media is in the description below. In the end, this is Adam Noyce of AN Productions saying, long live the Empire.